All right, folks, we're live here. We're coming to you from the Miami Springs Senior Center again, and we're joined today by Orlando Lamas. Orlando, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Orlando, you're running for Miami Springs City Council Group 1, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and for the benefit of the Miami Springs residents and the voters, who may be unfamiliar with you or haven't had to meet you in person when you're knocking on doors, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do for a living.
Well, I'm a 22-year resident of Miami Springs. Married, just celebrated 20 years with my beautiful wife.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I got two boys,
Uh-huh.
13 and 16, which they basically grew up in the rec center, so that's
Yep.
great. I happen to live right across the street from it, so very convenient.
Yeah.
I'm an architect and a builder by trade.
And if you don't mind, I understand your boys went to Springfield Elementary, right?
Yep.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, local homegrown.
Yep.
Yep. So I'm an architect and a builder by trade for the past 25 years.
Okay.
And I also run a couple of restaurants, some other endeavors, but really I'm an architect at heart. Everything
Architect.
I do spins off of that.
Excellent. And how long have you been an architect, you said?
25 years.
25 years. Okay. And did you grow up down here?
Yep, I was born and raised in Hialeah, just over the canal. I love Hialeah. It's a great place to be
So
from.
a Hialeah hospital baby like myself?
That's right.
All right.
It's a great place to be from, but Miami Springs is a great place to be.
It is a great place to be. Amen. I'll second that one. So you said you lived here for 20 plus years. What made you decide to move here in the first place?
You know, honestly, I didn't really know about this place. When we first got married, we started house shopping, and after several failed attempts to try to buy a place,
Right.
the realtor suggested, I found a little place in Miami Springs. I think you'll like it. I knew it existed, but I never came by.
Right.
Mainly because, the cops were always on you. You were speeding.
Yeah,
there.
yep,
So as
they
a
sure
kid,
were.
You didn't want to cut through here, which
Yeah.
now I really wish that was the case again. And we just fell in love with it. We bought it as our starter home.
Uh-huh.
And then once we stepped in, we loved it. We set roots and can't imagine living anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's one of those things, people want to move here and then they don't want to move out.
You move to another house in the Springs, and nobody leaves.
Yeah, yep. That's blessed. We moved here when I was a kid. I was in high school, just kind of starting high school. When my parents they were both bought here, and my son and I, we bought our first house, and then we were able to get our current house, and you upgrade to a bigger house. But you want to move in, but you don't want to move out of Miami Springs.
It's perfect. You can get anywhere to and from in a minute. I'm on the road all day, so I'll stop in 3-4 times a day just because it's perfect.
Okay.
That's all.
And the central location makes it easy,
Yep.
no matter where your job site is.
Meadow, Lejeune, it's great. It's great.
All right, so now you love living here. What do you love most about living in Miami Springs now that you've been here for 20 plus years?
The best, I'll tell you what, when my kids were going to Springview
Yeah.
is when I really appreciated the small town feel of it. Because I'd go to Milam's,
Yeah.
be shopping, I'd bump into teachers, and they would tell me how my kid did, or if, he had a bad day, or anything. Where else do you get that? It's an amazing little community that you don't appreciate until you start to get into those little details of it.
You cannot go, you can go into Milan's and be quick and get in and out, but you can't go into Milan's without bumping into people
Without
that
being
you know.
recognized, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But to me, that was one of the great touch points
Yeah.
of Miami Springs, where everybody's interconnected one way or another. And it's funny because for the past 22 years, I know the people who live in Miami Springs. I can spot them outside, like it's always a face.
Right.
And now that I'm knocking on doors, like, oh, there you live.
Yeah.
There you are.
Oh, I've heard your name. Now I see the face that
Yeah.
goes with that name. Excellent. Now, you're obviously running for Miami Springs City Council Group 1, and look, I got to bring this up. It looks like you had set paperwork to run for Brian Avila's former seat at some point.
Yes.
According to Florida politics, you had raised something like $150,000 to run for that, but then you didn't run for that. So, there are people that say, "Hey, what happened there?"
Right.
They want to know. So why don't you tell us in your words what happened and what's going on?
All right, so I saw the opportunity to run and help. I'm at a point now where I can.
Uh-huh.
I've learned enough. I feel I've matured enough in my career and I have enough experience where I can bring a lot to the table.
Right.
I don't need another job. I got plenty. I run plenty of work, But I really feel that now is the time that I can apply what I've learned in a very positive way. I was running for it. I had, I was a great guy. He helped me out a lot. But then redistricting happened and we lost a seat.
Okay.
We didn't lose our seat, but it would have affected 2 other good members. And it wasn't what I was for. Again, there were already one of those great people like Rizzo
Right.
was able to step in. So why go against him again? I wanted to help. I didn't need another job. So if there's somebody capable of doing it, then great. So I withdrew and I returned the money.
And then your name was briefly involved with the county commission seat, but then I don't know, I saw your name come up there and then it went away and I didn't know what happened
No,
there.
that was a blip while I waited for something else, but that was it.
Got it, okay. So what got you motivated for Miami Springs City Council?
Well, again, once you get the bug to help, you really want to help.
Okay.
Again, it's just the opportunity to help, and I see where I can contribute.
Right.
And when I was running for state, this seat wasn't available, obviously, or I would have preferred to run here.
Right.
But now that this is here, I can apply everything I know and see an immediate reaction, which is great, because state is great. You get to make great policy, but sometimes it's years down the road. Whereas here, you get to make policy, and immediately it takes effect.
And I tell it to people. You know, it's funny because talking about this yesterday, we'll have, you know, we have our own municipal date for our own election as opposed to being on a November date where everybody goes out to vote. And we'll get, if we're lucky, we'll get close to 2,000 people to come out and vote out of 14,000 some odd residents. And I'm like, your city council has more to do with your day to day than anything in Washington. You know, and everybody will, oh, I want to vote for president. And the effect that it has on people is tiny compared to your local city council, which has a lot more, from whether it's trash, whether it's you know, your zoning, what can you do with your own house,
Your immediate quality of life.
your immediate quality of life, your security, police, etc. So we urge people to come out, you know, to go out and vote on election day, because you know the city council matters a lot. So we want to get folks to come out and vote. So obviously you've been knocking on doors, you're campaigning and talking to people. What are some of the biggest issues that people are telling you?
Well, the standard taxes, parking,
Right.
And crime. That's what everybody seems to focus on. I know those are the buzzwords, and they're probably the buzzwords every election.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure we'll discuss parking ahead, but to me, the most immediate point that we can help citizens with is taxes.
Okay.
And that's with the annexation of all the area to the west.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a fact. It's the only way we can really reduce our taxes. Anything else, aside from that, we can just slow down how fast they escalate.
Right.
But the only reduction is assuming more commercial land.
So, you know, hitting on that, you know, that's been going around for 20 years or so. The city of Miami Springs got really close. VG got even closer to getting it passed. Medley did get it passed. At this point, it's really on County Commissioner Cabrera's hands in terms of trying to bring it up and pushing it through. From the city's standpoint, what do you think are steps that the city can do to make annexation a reality? Which leads me to one of my questions. Do you think annexation can happen?
I think it can happen. I think all our residents need to put a lot of pressure on not just Cabrera, but all our commissioners.
Okay.
Again, they represent us, and we can bring. My office happens to be in that area.
Okay.
So I would benefit from both sides. When it rains, it floods, and my employees can't get into work.
Right.
There's never a police presence anywhere.
Yeah.
And the roads full of potholes because it's very commercial. There's trucks parking all over the road and blocking. So they stand to gain a lot on that side. I think they're being filled with a lot of misinformation. To be fair, the first proposal was a very high tax rate for them.
Right.
But now that it's brought down to the same as Medley VG, I think they stand to gain a lot. I think, one, we need to get the residents involved and contact all our commissioners, let them know how important it is to us, not just listen to the business owners. And two, I think we really need to send a lot more information to those business owners, telling them what's really going to cost. I know city manager and mayor have been pushing that a lot. Yeah. Where any building owner can go to the city manager and find out exactly how much the tax difference will be. But we really need to get that information in their hands to make informed decisions. Yeah,
I want to echo that in terms of in terms of a campaign, the positive things of annexation for that area, because the push to residents was pretty clear. Hey, we're gonna lower your taxes, and people were like, okay, sign me up. Now some people, some of the concerns were always, well, there were kind of two concerns that came up, because the residents have voted twice on this, and it's come up in terms of annexation. One of the concerns on annexation was, will there be so much attention coming from that side that the regular voter here will lose the ease of reach and ease of attention from the council members, and from city staff and all that. We're going to become so busy now that they are not as responsive as they historically been to residents. So that was kind of question one. Most people think, no, they'll still be able to be responsive and all that. The second one was TGK it would be within the city borders.
Yeah.
And what does that do from a branding standpoint when the news reporter says, live from Miami Springs, we're here at TGK? And so that's one of the concerns from a branding standpoint. So what are your thoughts?
Well, as far as the first one, as far as accessibility to our council members, listen, we work for the residents no matter what. So if you're not happy, then I think the vote will show that. And that'll become an issue in the following election.
Got it.
So I don't think that'll be a long-lived problem. And every other city manages it, so I don't think it'll be an issue in the long term. As far as TGK, I agree it's not on brand with what Miami Springs is, but we need to think about a quality of life as far as taxes and all the money that could bring to us, which I think will offset the branding.
The other concern and issue that's brought up to me, and Mayor Mitchell's been adamant about this, and one of my concerns, it's like that area at some point or another will be annexed.
Yep. And
the question is who? So, fighting the annexation is almost like delaying the inevitable. So here are some reasons, and here's, in terms of the positive things of why to join Miami Springs as opposed to, say, Medley decides, hey, we got our part already, now let's go for some more, and we're still without any annexation. I've been so scared, or Doral going after it. Yeah. I've been very scared that some sneaky thing will happen on the back end, and one of the other cities will get it instead of us.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's inevitable. I mean, the counties have to give out the land, right?
Yeah.
They're not supposed to have it. I think they need to realize, again, if they say they get absorbed by Medley or Doral, then they'd just be another commercial block. If they come to us, they're special. We have no other real commercials. So we get to make new policy for them. We get to make new zoning for them. They'll have a chance to really cater what they need to help us cater to their needs. Whereas if they go to Medley or Doral or anybody else, they're just going to fall in the same bucket.
Yeah.
So, the businesses there are much different to say the ones in Medley with the fisheries, et cetera. So I think it's part of that campaign we just spoke about. They need to be educated that if they come here, they have a chance to participate in how we make their policy.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Now, as far as, you talked about taxes. You also talked about parking and police. So what are people telling you about parking and police?
So parking, I think everybody has a problem with parking. And it's not the new building's fault yet, right? Because it's not even open yet.
Right.
But once it opens, it will highlight the problem we have with parking. But I think we need to talk a little further because the parking, as far as I'm concerned, is a symptom of a bigger problem. I think we're a bit spoiled because we're used to pulling up right to the store we want in downtown and going in.
Right.
That's a sign of a failing commercial district. The fact that there's always parking means the businesses aren't thriving. People aren't walking, they're not going.
Right.
So I think that's part of a bigger conversation. As far as the fix, the only solution that I see is the parking garage, like everybody discusses, and the police law, et cetera. I understand it's expensive, but it's going to be more expensive in the future when we finally decide to do it.
Right.
And we just got to bite the bullet and do it. And then having that as an amenity, it will attract much better businesses. It'll just start to pay itself off.
All right.
But we can't be always afraid of not spending any money because then we'll just come to a standstill.
I appreciate that. And then police. You talked about police. What are people telling you about police? And you alluded to that in your early conversation in terms of the fear that you had to drive here when you were first driving. Yeah, fear of driving in Miami Springs.
In retrospect, that was great, right?
Yeah.
I wish you could instill that fear. Everybody complains about not the crime rate except for the Northwest 36 corridor, obviously, but the speeding and the overall police presence. I understand we're very limited by resources. It's, money makes the world go around at this point, right? So I think the police do a great job. I think they're being very distracted by the Northwest 36th Street problems that we're having. And what we're seeing now is just a long-term play of that same problem. If we could find a better solution, obviously more police on 36th Street just isn't going to solve it because the bad guys will just go around the block and come back. I mean, we got to be realistic. And it's another drain on the city.
Right.
I'd rather have those cops roaming the city and keeping us happy, right? But I think once we solve that, then we'll be back to the usual police presence that we're all used to.
Okay. And so what are things that you think can solve the issues on 36th Street?
So I think we can learn a lot from other cities. City of Miami came out with a zoning code called Miami 21.
Yeah.
Right? And that's basically what cleaned up Biscayne Boulevard. Right? That was all same prostitution and the problems we're having here, bad buildings. So one of the key things that they have there is called adaptive reuse, right? Because we can rezone Northwest 36, but that could take 20 years before a developer comes in, builds a new building, and has to abide by those codes.
Right.
Until then, we're stuck with factories, industrial offices, all that's shut down at 5. The lights go dark, and that's when all the bad guys can come out and walk all afternoon. So we need to find a way to get cafes, restaurants, anything that's open much later, so we get more pedestrian traffic, more people walking around, eyes on the street. And I think we can borrow from Miami 21 where they have the adaptive reuse.
Okay.
And that means you can use the existing building as long as you don't modify it for a growing list of uses without having to provide extra parking or whatever we need.
Okay.
Because what that does is it allows for immediate use of the building rather than
Right.
wait and hope that somebody
That someone redevelops it.
Right.
Okay.
And you get a few of those coming in, then suddenly you have a thriving district, and then the real developers will come into those buildings and do what we need on 36th Street, you know. But we need to attract people to bring their money in and know that it's safe, and it's going to do well in those districts.
Got it. All right. You know, as you're saying that the city council has gone ahead and approved a executive search firm to look for a new city manager.
Yeah.
Now that's just the beginning. At the end, just the way the timing works out, not the current council, but the next council will ultimately select the new city manager.
Yep.
What do you want to see from the next city manager?
All right, in my job, I get to deal with city managers every day, right? And just in about every municipality of Dade and Broward. As far as I'm concerned, I think that's one of the most important positions in our local government.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the city manager, the most important thing is that they got to have a clear vision of where the city's going. And they got to be visionaries. They got to be able to, they have to be a student of cities. They need to be aware of what goes on in every other city, what works, what doesn't work, and what we can borrow and bring back over here. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time or experiment at a very high cost.
Right.
So a lot we can learn from every little city. But I think another key thing is city councils, mayors, we all rotate, right? And as a new council comes in, there's going to be a new vision. So we can't have that constantly moving. So whoever the new city manager has to have a clear vision, set by us, by the people.
Right.
And once it's set in motion, they have to be strong enough to make sure it stays in place. So when a new council, a new mayor comes in, that person has to be strong enough to say, no, that's not on brand with what Miami Springs wants to be,
Right.
and not be afraid of losing their job right away.
Right. Right.
So to me, that's a key point.
Got it. I appreciate that. What improvements, you know, we talked about 36th Street a little bit, we talked about police and parking. What other improvements would you like to see completed here in Miami Springs?
I think the Arbor City thing is a great movement.
Yeah.
I love it when you're flying into Miami and you can just see the green triangle.
Yep.
Code compliance, I think we can strengthen that a little.
Okay.
Again, a big concern of mine is this home prices start to skyrocket here, taxes go up.
Yeah.
And that could lead to another series of problems where people can start partitioning out their homes because they got to make payments. Suddenly you have
Yeah.
7 cars in front of the house, you know, and you have.
Some will argue that's happening already.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, and these are residents who are not going to be invested in our community. They're
Right.
more transient. So I think that's a key thing. We need to really, we already have the code compliance in place. We just need to use it a bit more, skillfully.
Got it. Okay. You know, you're talking about that. There's something that I brought up, and it's been a year since it's brought up. There's an apartment complex on South Royal Poinciana, just coming in from Lejeune. After you pass that Aladdin Hotel, there's a complex there, and there's no parking signs all along that easement, and there are cars all along
All
that.
over, yep.
And I'm like, okay, either we ticket them and enforce the laws, or take out the signs and let them park there. But having the signs there and people parking there for the last year is like, well, your rules don't matter to me, and you know, it's like a big, you know, read between the lines in my hand and to the city. So, you know, there are things like that that really bother me. That either we either enforce the laws or change the laws for that area, but don't have people blatantly violating our laws.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
They're in place, so we need to enforce them. And they're there for a reason. Obviously, there were a problem at some point when they got ridden to the bus.
Yeah.
You know, I understand sometimes as the economy slows down, the government, you know, local governments try to work with them, and you don't want to be ticketed for every little thing.
Right.
But some things like parking on swale, that was brought up during the forum as well. I agree. You know, it just, it's bad, it compacts the sand, the dirt, it doesn't let the water percolate.
Yeah.
And it also just looks ugly when you have dead grass everywhere, right? So
Totally
the
agree.
building code here requires 3 parking spaces per house.
Yeah.
then make them have 4. Or, it's in there for a reason. I think it needs to be enforced.
All right. We kind of went through a lot of these really quickly. Any other items that you want to bring up or share with residents that we haven't covered here?
No, I think we.
Or other big items that as you're going to order, anything else, or a unique thing about yourself that people don't know about?
Well, okay, one item I'm really concerned about. Again, it's something I deal with every day. As prices go up, taxes go up.
Yeah.
It starts to open the door for developers, and that's something I'm really concerned about. We really need managed growth in Miami Springs because we're at a critical point. I think we're at a pivoting point. We're about to become something else as demographic changes. People are buying houses at crazy amounts here. Suddenly they're paying $10,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
They're going to demand higher amenities and better quality product, right? Not that we have anything bad right now, but it just comes, they want more and more and more. And I think it becomes a danger once this whole thing starts to happen. That opens the door for developers to come in because suddenly they're like, well, Miami Springs isn't accessible anymore. The only way to really lower taxes is to bring in more multifamily units, et cetera. And it'll reach a point where people say, you know what, let's just do it because I can't afford my taxes. And I think we need to be very vigilant of that, not allowing that to happen.
Right.
Because once you do that, then we lose the entire.
Well, you lose the entire nature of our community.
Yeah, Miami Springs will cease to be Miami Springs.
Yeah.
Right now, we've managed to keep all multifamily on the outskirts and very limited.
Right.
And I think we've reached our threshold on multifamily. So that's something that, again, that's experience I bring from 25 years of witnessing it, how it happens, how they creep in.
Right.
And I think we need to be very, very vigilant.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, when can people start to vote?
Early voting, I believe, is the 31st.
So I think, Friday the 31st.
Yeah, unless you voted by mail.
Right, unless you vote for
You
mine.
already have it. And please show up and vote. Like you mentioned, people just don't think about because it's not in the news and not in the newspaper. But this is even more important because it's immediate change for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have, we got 3 races right now, and this, I think during the pandemic there was one election where they went uncontested. I'm like, I've never seen that in my life. And now, okay, you're getting more of a vibrant challenges here in some of the chases. In your case, there's an open seat, but there we got a race going in seat 2, another one in seat 4. So it's great to see people, not so much necessarily challenging, but people participating in the democratic process. And I think it's a beautiful thing when residents come out and participate in it, and it allows ultimately the voters choices, right? That without you running, they wouldn't have that choice to vote for you. So we appreciate the residents that come out, and it's not easy. I know you're working, you're door to door.
You meet interesting people, very colorful people, but just a lot of regular people, and it's just great, And everybody has their concerns. The best one I've heard so far, though, is to reduce traffic. We should put a toll coming in from Hialeah.
I've been hearing that for 20 years.
And I've heard more than once. Yeah.
Good luck on that one. All right, so if you want to go early voting, they can go in-person early voting on Friday, March 31st at City Hall. And they can also go Saturday, April 1st at City Hall. That's not an election. That's not an April Fool's joke. You can go and vote early on April 1st at City Hall. Then Election Day is on?
April 4th.
April 4th, and they can vote where? At
the golf course, 7 to 7.
At the golf course, so you can head to the country club. Plenty of parking from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. At the Miami Springs Country Club on Tuesday, April 4th, which is Election Day.
Yeah.
Now, I always like to ask all the candidates this final question: why should they come out and vote for you?
It's a great question. I think it's because of the experience I bring. Again, after 25 years of dealing with every other city in South Florida, I don't know everything, but I know enough to spot a bad planning decision when I see it. I think a lot of cities tend to do things on a knee-jerk reaction kind of way. Right. Or even if citizens say this is the way to fix it and they do it, they don't accurately study the repercussions or what we can do. Again, I think there's a lot we can learn from other cities, like West Miami with the circles, or Miami Shores, where I think their downtown is very much like ours. They've managed to revive it. So those cities are always willing to share their resources with sister cities like us. So I think I bring a lot of that experience working with different groups. I'm used to it. And I think it's very important that you guys do your research. Just don't vote for the guy you like, vote for the guy that you need.
I appreciate
or girl.
Yeah. Oh, we definitely appreciate that. And how can residents learn more about you?
You can go to my website, OrlandoLamas.com, or you can give me a call on my private cell phone, 786-295-1045.
All right. That's one of the things we like here about Miami Springs. The candidates are very easily accessible.
Absolutely.
It's a small town. You can reach out to the candidates, and if there's something, the question that we didn't ask here, you have a question, you can ask them before we go out and vote. And do it beforehand. Don't wait for election day. Although I'm sure you'll be out there, saying hi to people going out to vote on election day. Let's see. So, again, election day is Tuesday, April 4th. So head out and vote. Guys, share this video with other residents out there. And again, Orlando, we appreciate you participating in this democratic process, your commitment to the city of Miami Springs, and for you joining us here today.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Orlando.